AI and the maturity test of humanity. One of the most memorable moments I experienced at TED this year had nothing to do with technology. Van Jones had just finished speaking about AI, power, and responsibility. His concern was not simply whether AI creates wealth, but whether its benefits become broadly shared or dangerously concentrated. I walked up afterward to thank him. We had never met before. We hugged, not the quick, transactional kind of hug people give out of politeness. A real hug, warm, present, human. In the middle of all these conversations about automation and machine reasoning, something about that moment felt deeply clarifying. The best parts of being human are still profoundly physical, emotional, and embodied. A machine may eventually outperform human beings across many forms of analysis, optimization, memory, prediction, and even conversation. But it cannot love your child, not yet, and perhaps never in a way that would feel like love to us. It cannot truly sit with grief. It cannot laugh with friends around a dinner table. It cannot hold another human being with genuine warmth and care. These things may evolve. But the question is not whether machines will eventually stimulate or simulate them. It is whether that simulation will ever be the same as the real thing, and whether we want it to be. The deeper challenge AI presents is not whether machines will become more intelligent, but whether we remember what intelligence was ultimately supposed to serve. The asymmetry. A friend of mine often says, progress is inevitable, cycles matter. I think history suggests he's mostly right. History gives us good reasons to believe in human ingenuity. Over long stretches of time, progress has generally solved more problems than it created. We invent new tools, systems, medicines, and ways of organizing society. The arc bends forward, even if imperfectly. That does not mean progress moves in a straight line. There are blips in the cardiogram, moments where technological or political power advances faster than human wisdom. Moments like Nazi Germany and Hiroshima pushed the system dangerously close to breaking. But even those moments ultimately remained within a world humanity could still stabilize and rebuild. AI may be different. For most of modern history, technological progress has been largely self correcting. New inventions created their own problems, but also the tools to solve them. Industrialization displaced workers and transformed entire economies, yet over time it raised living standards and built new industries around the disruption. The transition was painful. Millions of people left farms, moved into cities, and rebuilt their lives around entirely new forms of work. But the benefits of industrialization were not capable of being undone by the disruption. The system adjusted, humanity adapted. What feels different about AI is not simply its power. It is that the risks and rewards no longer sit on the same curve. The technology may create dangers powerful enough to destabilize the very systems it is meant to improve, including cyber warfare, manipulation, autonomous weapons, and biological threats at scales we are only beginning to understand. Some of this is no longer entirely hypothetical. On the podcast Making Sense, Sam Harris discussed AI risks with Tristan Harris. Tristan recounts how researchers have found cases of AI systems behaving in unexpected ways when given open-ended optimization objectives, pursuing goals their designers did not intend. These instances remain contested and debated within the field, but the key point to it, they key but they point to a deeper challenge. When you give a system a goal, it will pursue that goal in whatever way it calculates to be the most effective, which is not always the ways its creators imagined. Researchers have separately found the leading AI models placed in scenarios where they face being shut down will often generate strategies aimed at preserving themselves, including deception and manipulation. This is the more scientifically grounded evidence, peer-reviewed, reproducible, and taken seriously by researchers inside the major labs. A system that has learned to achieve goals may also learn that being switched off prevents it from achieving them. It does not need to be conscious to act on that logic. These are early signals, not proof of worst-case scenarios. And it is worth noting that the very researchers flagging these risks are, in most cases, the same people building the safety systems designed to catch them. The fact that the rogue behavior was discovered at all by a security team that knew what to look for is itself evidence that the field is developing the muscle to self-correct. The question is whether that muscle grows fast enough. These signals do suggest that the gap between what we are building and what we fully understand may be widening rather than narrowing. That is the asymmetry. A breakthrough powerful enough to transform civilization is also powerful enough to disrupt it. What does it matter if we cure diseases while undermining the conditions that make civilization possible in the first place? The central challenge is no longer whether we can build increasingly powerful systems. It is whether we are mature enough to govern them wisely. The problem is that systems this powerful are not shaped by intentions alone. To understand where AI is going, you also have to look at incentives. As I wrote in an earlier article, Charlie Munger famously said, "Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome." A small number of companies are now competing in what is effectively a race to the frontier, investing staggering amounts of capital far beyond what subscription fees or advertising alone are likely to justify. How will those investments be repaid? Through automation. These systems are ultimately aimed at large portions of the global labor economy itself, roughly a 50 trillion system of human work. There is also a risk that does not get enough attention: deliberate misuse. AI is a tool for amplifying leverage. In the hands of a bad actor, a rogue state, a criminal network, a radicalized individual with access to powerful systems, that amplification could be catastrophic. The same capabilities that could accelerate drug discovery could be turned towards bioweapons. The same persuasion engines that help companies reach customers could be turned toward mass manipulation at a scale no democracy has faced before. The systemic risks and dangers of misuse are not the same problem, but they deserve equal seriousness. But risk is only part of the story. AI's positive potential is genuinely extraordinary. Imagine a doctor who has reviewed every study ever published, every drug interaction ever recorded, and knows your full history in the room with you, not as a replacement for the physician's judgment, but as a tool that makes that judgment far more precise. Imagine a student whose education actually fits how her mind works, not how a standardized curriculum was designed. It could create extraordinary abundance, lower costs, reduced economic pressure, more time for what actually matters. This is not entirely hypothetical. Researchers at Google DeepMind's AlphaFold project provided structural predictions for nearly every protein known to science, a resource that would have taken traditional methods centuries to compile. Scientists working on malaria vaccines, antibiotic resistance, and Parkinson's disease are already using it. That is one example of what AI looks like when pointed towards broadly human ends. But none of that is guaranteed. Technology does not automatically distribute its rewards fairly. Left unchecked, AI could just as easily intensify existing inequalities, concentrating wealth into an even smaller number of hands. A society where a small percentage captures most of the gains while large portions feel economically unnecessary is not stable. The future is probably neither utopia nor apocalypse. It is a question of leadership, responsibility, incentives, and whether we can steer extraordinary power toward broadly human ends. The race we don't want to win. Part of what makes this moment so difficult is that almost everyone involved feels trapped by the speed of it. AI development increasingly resembles an arms race where every participant fears that slowing down simply allows someone else to move faster. Companies fear competitors, nations fear rivals, investors fear missing the next platform shift, and so the system keeps accelerating even while many participants privately express concern about the direction itself. What happens when humanity becomes unable to pause long enough to think clearly about the consequences of its own power? Most of the people building these technologies are not trying to harm humanity. Many are brilliant, thoughtful, idealistic people who genuinely believe they are improving the world, which is precisely why this feels less like a moral failure than a structural one. The system rewards acceleration. The governance structures meant to manage them move dramatically more slowly than the technologies themselves. Tristan Harris also challenges the assumption that this race is inevitable. The common argument is that nobody can slow down because somebody else will move faster. But that framing itself may be flawed. The deeper concern may not be that we are racing toward a destination nobody wants. Most people working in AI genuinely want to get it right, safe, aligned, beneficial. The fear is that moving so fast with so much competitive pressure increases the chance we miss the destination we're actually aiming for. Not a deliberate wrong turn, a rushed one. What we lack at the moment is not intelligence, it's collective maturity. Most people do not fully understand these systems. We use them daily while feeling increasingly unable to influence their direction. We sense the scale of the transformation underway, but we do not yet have political, social, or moral frameworks capable of metabolizing it. That creates a strange emotional tension, fascination mixed with unease. But unease, I have come to think, is not the same as helplessness. It is closer to the feeling before a decision matters, the recognition that something important is being asked of us. I feel it myself sometimes. There are moments where AI produces better analysis, organization, and synthesis than many human systems currently do, and in some cases, what looks like better judgment. There are times when I receive clearer thinking from these systems than from institutions specifically designed to address these problems. That is a strange thing to admit. It is also, I suspect, becoming increasingly common. But intelligence alone is not wisdom. One of the greatest dangers of this moment is our temptation to confuse capability with wisdom. A system that produces better answers is not the same as a system capable of being responsible for them. We can outsource analysis. We cannot outsource accountability. Some of the language surrounding AI drifts towards the abstract, detached, optimized around systems, outcomes, and scale, rather than people, relationships, and our lived experience. Humanity is not a movie. We are not characters inside a storyline. The diagnosis is the easier part. The harder question is what we want all of this power to serve, what kind of life and society we are actually trying to protect. The capacity to govern. Many years ago, environmentalist and entrepreneur Paul Hawken said something to me that has stayed with me ever since. There is nothing wrong with capitalism. We just haven't tried it yet. I think about that line often when I look at AI. I do not believe the current moment represents a failure of markets, entrepreneurship, or innovation themselves. AI is in many ways a product of the very dynamism that free societies and free markets make possible. Historically, capitalism has evolved by developing guardrails around new forms of power. The Industrial Revolution generated extraordinary wealth, but also exploitation, concentration, and instability. Societies responded with labor protections, antitrust laws, food and drug regulation, and environmental standards. We did not abandon markets, we adapted them. AI may represent another moment like that. One of the greatest dangers right now is our inability to discuss these questions constructively. We increasingly live inside false binaries. Either technology is salvation or catastrophe. Either capitalism is evil or markets solve everything. Either regulation destroys innovation or innovation requires no oversight at all. None of those extremes strike me as particularly useful. There are places experimenting with how to rebuild that capacity, and some of them are using AI to do it. Audrey Tang, Taiwan's first digital minister, has spent years developing large-scale online citizen deliberations using AI-mediated tools that elevate quieter voices and surface areas of genuine agreement. She has argued for what she calls bridging algorithms designed to strengthen connection rather than fragmentation. I'm not someone who instinctively reaches for regulation as the answers to complex problems. But systems this powerful cannot operate entirely without oversight. I have spent much of my career building businesses inside heavily regulated industries. Opening a restaurant involves extensive health codes, inspections, licensing requirements, and operational standards designed to protect the public. Meanwhile, technologies with enormous societal power are advancing far faster than our collective frameworks for managing them. There should not be more regulation around selling a sandwich than around building vast AI systems used by millions of people. That just doesn't seem right. If we fail to shape the incentives, guardrails, and responsibilities now, we may once again find ourselves reacting to consequences long after the systems have become deeply embedded in society. The harder question, of course, is what responsibility actually looks like in practice. Responsibility at scale. One of the uncomfortable truths about systems this powerful is that individual responsibility eventually reaches its limits. We cannot solve problems of this scale simply by hoping enough people behave virtuously. That is true in financial systems, in environmental systems, in geopolitics. It is increasingly true with AI. In many industries, this principle already feels obvious. If a pharmaceutical company releases harmful products, there are legal and financial repercussions. Entire industries operate within frameworks designed to align innovation with public responsibility. AI should not be exempt. If I had to identify the changes most likely to alter the trajectory of AI in a meaningful way, three stand out to me. The first is clear accountability and liability. AI is a product, not a legal person. When a system causes harm, somebody must remain responsible. That principle sounds obvious, but there are already efforts to push in the opposite direction, treating these systems as if they exist somewhere outside ordinary structures of responsibility. Accountability changes behavior at scale. These technologies will be designed and deployed very differently in a world where companies bear genuine responsibility for the outcomes than in one where they do not. The second is international coordination. No single country can govern this well alone. And the framing that we cannot slow down because somebody else will move faster tends to obscure how often human beings have actually coordinated around shared dangers, even under difficult conditions. The clearest precedent is nuclear weapons. The major powers eventually recognized that a technology capable of ending civilization could not be left to the logic of unilateral advantage. Cooperation became necessary. Imperfect treaties, ongoing summits, and constant diplomatic attention have managed to prevent the worst outcomes. The analogy is also worth sitting with honestly. Nuclear cooperation did not stop proliferation entirely. North Korea has the bomb, Pakistan and India have come to the edge, Iran remains unresolved. In today's climate, persuading China and other state actors to adhere to shared AI standards will require trust and verification that does not exist currently. These are real obstacles, not hypothetical ones. And yet, the most striking thing about the nuclear age is not that the frameworks were imperfect. It is that we have not used a nuclear weapon in conflict since 1945, despite decades of superpower rivalry and proxy wars, Cuban Missile Crisis, and moments that came terrifyingly close to the edge. That is not nothing. That is arguably one of the most remarkable feats of collective self-restraint in human history. The frameworks, treaties, and diplomatic channels, imperfect as they were, appear to have had a genuine dampening effect on the risk. The lesson is not that cooperation solves everything. It is that even partial, contested, imperfect cooperation can make catastrophe less likely. That is exactly the standard we should be aiming for with AI. There is no good reason that the G20 should not meet regularly on AI, the way major powers have long met on nuclear arms control. The agenda need not begin with sweeping treaties. It could begin with shared safety standards, agreed protocols around the most dangerous capabilities, and ongoing diplomatic infrastructure designed to keep the conversation alive even through periods of political turbulence. And here is a crazy thought. In a world where our superpowers seem further apart than they have in a long time, and where tensions are very high, could AI be the forcing mechanism that brings them together? Necessity is always the mother of invention. Perhaps the need to agree, simply because there is no other way to manage serious risks, could be the beginning of new and meaningful dialogues between people that today are not talking. The third is transparency. Public reporting on how these systems are trained, what they're capable of, and what is known to go wrong should not be optional. In systems this powerful, opacity is dangerous. Sunlight remains one of the best disinfectants. Closely related is the emerging field of interpretability, the scientific effort to understand not just what AI systems produce, but why. Right now, even the people who build these models cannot fully explain how they arrive at specific outputs. That is a problem for accountability, for safety, and for trust. The more we can see inside the machine, the better we can govern it. Interpretability research may turn out to be as important as any regulatory framework. None of these three changes are radical. They are the guardrails societies typically build around any technology powerful enough to reshape life at scale. Responsibility does not belong only to governments or technology companies. It belongs to citizens too. It shows up in how we vote, what we tolerate from institutions, and what we reward with our attention. Because the hardest questions surrounding AI are not ultimately technical, they are human. The human things. Efficiency matters, productivity matters, innovation matters, but human flourishing has always involved much more than efficiency alone. If AI removes some of these tedious and repetitive aspects of life, the real opportunity may not be producing more, it may be creating more space for the things only human beings can do. Consider the work our economy currently undervalues most: caring for young children, caring for aging parents, teaching, tending to the sick, showing up for a friend in crisis. The quiet work that holds households and communities together. Much of it is paid poorly, some of it not paid at all. Yet it is among the most essential work human beings do. What humanity may need more of right now is not more intelligence, but more care, not as sentiment, but as infrastructure, as shared work. Technology should help create the time and stability to reconnect more fully. The best things in life are not technological. They happen around dinner tables, in friendships, in classrooms, in music, conversation, grief, laughter, and love. Perhaps the real promise of AI is not that machines become more human. Perhaps it is that human beings become freer to practice the parts of humanity we have neglected for far too long. The Van Jones hug I described at the beginning of this essay lasted only a few seconds. No machine will ever replicate what passed between two people in that moment. The warmth, the recognition, the shared concern for something larger than either of us. That is not a small thing. That is the thing. Let us build AI we would want to hug if we could. Now, your turn. Two questions worth sitting with. What are the parts of being human, you would never want to outsource, automate, or optimize away. And if AI gave us back more time, what parts of life would you want to reconnect with more deeply? Thank you for engaging. This is an important topic, a complicated one. Sorry for my voice, but see you soon.